Welcome, everybody, to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Thanks for hanging out with us for a beer and some conversation, education. Say we're educational, right?
Adjacent.
Informative, education. We're going to be, I've got some beer science this week to share. So we're going to talk about hops. I've got some hops science to share with everybody. But I am Tim Dennis. Brian Hewitt, how you doing?
Not too bad. Something in the air right now is just clobbering me. So if I sound congested, it's because I'm really congested. But I'm otherwise pretty decent. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have a beer in my glass. And how are you doing, Tim?
I'm good, man. I'm good. You do have a little nasally scratch there.
Yeah,
that happens. Did you drink any of the ginger drink, Brian?
No, I forgot. I do have some of that around summer. Oh, I should have thought of that. I didn't. Dang it.
So we've got this stuff it's essentially crystallized ginger and crystallized honey in a little packet. And you can drink it cold, but I like it a lot better hot, especially if you're using it for your throat, sinuses, or whatever. But a decade or more ago, a singer friend of mine said it's wonderful for preparing your voice and clearing the sinuses and that. She said she used to drink it before she'd go on if she wasn't feeling 100%. And I have tried that even with a cold or something. Like if you're feeling down, there's something about that that's soothing, and it may not cure it, but it's nice, and it's good with a little rum or bourbon as well. FYI,
it's not a bad idea. Yeah.
I'm little hot toddy, ginger.
I did have the tiniest swig of bourbon with my pregame drink, so that actually calmed things down a little bit. Believe it or not, it's good. The magic of booze. Tim. The
magic of booze. We all know it's a magical elixir. Mike, Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Like Brian, I'm excited to have a beer in my glass and talk about the best beer happenings of the week.
Yeah, I was thinking those exact same words, Nate. Absolutely. What'd you do this weekend? Did you go to the mall and smell perfume?
No, I actually didn't get an invite to that. So,
sorry. Next time.
We should have invited him. It would have been great.
No, it's okay if it's in a three-way.
That's right.
No, I went to a pop punk cover band up in Cartersville. On Saturday night, and it was a really good time.
All right.
Played all the hot hits like some Blink-182, some 41.
Absolutely. Did you say pop punk?
Pop punk.
Okay, because you're like they played all the punk hits like Blink-182, and so I'm like, no.
No, they didn't play Misfits. They didn't play
Descendants or Dead Kennedys.
The Clash, yeah.
Okay, pop punk. All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Well, good stuff, guys. Well, let's talk about what we are drinking this week. Brian, what are your beers of the week?
So I started off with the a hams, because sometimes you got to go hams, and good old American lager as my pregame, and it was nice. And like I mentioned, I didn't have a full shot. I had a little sip. I'm like, I want a little taste of bourbon to go with this. And so I had a little bit of that. Right now I'm working on a Trillium Vicinity, which is a double IPA. And I will be getting into a Parish Ghost in the Machine later on, perhaps, depending on how far I get into the Trillium in the course of the show. I'm already starting to work on it. Yeah, just the basic
Just the standard Ghost. Because we did go to this new tap in Chamblee, Georgia, this new bar there that's just getting opened up. It's a mini food hall, I think is what they said it's going to be. And it's got I forget the name, Brian, tap and something, but it's
Chamblee tap or something like that.
It is a tap, and I think they're going to have barbecue once it gets going, and a coffee house there. So really basically everything you need to survive. But they had Parish Baby Ghost there, and I think they had Infinite Ghost in cans, or maybe it's the other way around. I think they had Infinite Ghost on tap and Baby
Infinite Ghost on tap and Baby Ghost in cans.
Yeah.
And I think
hams.
Yeah. And hams and cans. And it is called the Chamblee Tap and Market. Chamblee Tap Plus Market. So they're still starting up. There's a lot of slots in there for businesses to come in. They've got a barbecue joint in there now. They've got a coffee shop that looks like it's all set up and about to open really soon. I forget there was actually a little sign that said when they open, and it's going to be soon. And there's like 3 or 4 stalls additional that, or maybe not 3 or 4, maybe 2 or 3. I don't know. A few more places. Like there will be a good selection of beer, a good selection of food and coffee. So it's going to be a fun place to hang out when it's all rocking and rolling.
It was slightly more family friendly than I like my beer bars. Yeah. So other than that, it was pretty cool. It was loud. It was loud in there.
It was loud, and they even had the sound treatments.
They did.
We looked on the ceiling,
more.
Even with the sound treatments. They need to cover the entire ceiling with them. But I liked the place, and the selection was great. It was
nice folks
seemed like
there.
ample
Good beer.
seating. Yeah. Oh yeah, great selection of beer, and a good. As we're coming into ideal patio season again, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of it before it goes really cold. And they had a lot of patio area too, and it looked like they had a really good lot for parking, so you don't have to worry too much about that. And that's
once you get over the launch ramp to get into the parking lot.
Yeah, and that's a common thing in town. I know that Tim likes to complain about it. But this, for a place in town, they have ample parking. So
I'd agree.
It's cool.
Yeah, parking in inside Atlanta, and I mean technically not Atlanta, but inside the perimeter, I guess, as we say here.
I guess that's not technically
for the non-locals. We've got 285, which circles Atlanta, and that is called the perimeter. So it's either inside or outside the perimeter. And the people inside the perimeter think that like wild people live outside. Like if you're outside of there, you're just
they do. Yeah,
you're nearly feral.
Yeah,
basically, is what they look at it at. But Nate, what are you drinking this week?
So a couple weeks ago, Brian had mentioned that he was having a spaghetti, and I thought, wow, that seems like a fantastic drink for this hot Georgia still summer day that we're having. So I'm enjoying the tail end of my spaghetti right now for my pregame, and then for my postgame, or actually during the game, keeping up with the dark beers for summer, because it's been barley wines, it's been stouts. Today it's a strong ale from our friends at Orpheus. May they forever rest in peace.
R.I.P.
I'm drinking Dreams of a Distant Past, and that is a bourbon, rye, and cognac barrel-aged strong ale.
That sounds nice.
21 months, and I'm very much looking forward to this.
Good stuff, man. Well, I've got from Highland Brewing, the Long Game, which is a tropical lager. And I found that it's been in the fridge for a while. So I've had this one a minute, as they say, but it has been chilled, and it looked like it was calling to me this week. So that's what I'm sipping on. So Nate, I have cocktail questions for you. So I saw a TikTok reel, one of those, where they did a milk washed pina colada. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, I've made 4 or 5 batches of that this year.
Okay. Brian, are you familiar with the milk wash process?
I've heard of fat washing, where I think you soak things and then you strain it out after it sits for a bit.
So do you remember that
milk, though? I don't know.
Key lime liqueur that we had, that when you added other liquor to it, it curdled?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It was delicious. But yes, if you tried to make a cocktail with it, that curdled. It was a key lime cream, I think is what it was.
Yeah,
from Blue Chair Bay.
Blue Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, Blue Chair Bay. It's fantastic. And I became aware of that because they used to, when I was down on the Florida coast, they would float it on top of one of those frozen drinks. And apparently it wouldn't curdle on top of a frozen drink.
Okay.
And it was amazing. So anyway, fantastic.
So with this fella took, I think it was coconut milk or maybe cream or maybe both, I think. But he poured rum in there and stirred it up, and it curdled. It curdled fairly quickly, but then he let it set a while. And I remember he put so he put the rum in with the creams, stirred it, let it set, it curdled, he strained it out, and then he took the fruit juice side of things and put them on rocks. So basically it was a clear pina colada and still had that creamy, milky flavor from the washing, right, Nate? So that's essentially the point, right?
In a roundabout way, you need acid to cause the milk to curdle. So he probably did some sort of added some powdered acid or something.
Juice. That
would do it.
When I'm making it, I add powdered citric and malic acid to pineapple juice.
Okay,
and that acid adjusted pineapple juice interacts with the milk and it causes it to curdle. And then you have to filter that out, and you get this heavier mouthfeel because you've got some of the proteins from the milk left over, but it's clear. It's like it's called clarified cocktails.
I was just going to ask that because Alton Brown had some recipes that I saw from an episode where I forget, Good Eats or something like that, where he went over cocktails. He had a clarified milk punch, and the idea was it came out clear. And
but it's
I have issues with milk.
Huh?
Yes, but I'm like, I really want to try that, even though I know I'm gonna need to take some lactate to go with it.
You will.
But, it sounds great, and it looks really cool too. So
I guess essentially you're keeping the whey, right? If you do it with milk, the whey, your curds get curdled, and
correct.
Like Little Miss Muffet, you got your curds and whey right there, and toss the curds out, and then I guess technically you could eat if you could find a use for it. I wonder if you could make a spread or a dip or something. If it
I was going to ask, can you make cheese out of those? Could you take all of that and build it up and then actually make a little cheese? Yeah, that's going too far.
I don't know. But it's really fortuitous that you're bringing this up now, because I just did a double batch a week and a half ago. So I've got like 3 handles of clarified cocktail, because I just make it takes so much labor to do it. I just have a lot of it right now.
3 handles of clarified milk cocktail.
Tim likes to talk about how much I drink, and I'm thinking Mo Mike Nate's like knocking back the cocktails furiously, and we don't even
casually a liter of rum in each batch, and there's 2 batches. So you guys can take care of it, right?
Not me. That's you, I think.
I accept the challenge.
Brian, I'll go for it.
I forgot I had a freezer door pre-made margarita that's probably still in the freezer that's not working. Don't get me started. And I like that concept of like batching that all up, and then when you want a cocktail, you make a couple of them, because they are kind of a nuisance to make when you're tired or whatever. Like I wouldn't mind a margarita, but I'm not gonna make one. But if I had one, I would drink one. And that fixes that problem. So I like this idea a lot.
Ready to go. Yeah, when I saw that, I actually meant to share the link with you. I'm like, I'll have to mention this, because that's it looked interesting. I like a good pina colada. I'll sit on the beach and sip them all day, and just having one on the rocks like that sounds pretty darn appealing to me. I would be down with that, because I give myself brain freeze with the frozen ones, and I'm assuming that takes that out of the equation, which I would greatly appreciate.
Would the clarified part take it out of the equation?
Well, pina coladas are a slushy, basically.
Yeah.
It's a frozen drink. So if you're just using, it's not creamy and frozen. You're just like doing it over the rocks. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be like drinking ice. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha. I got you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, I have some beer science talk for us this week, specifically talking about hop thiols. And Brian, since you asked, and I will say this comes from Stan Hieronymus's Hop Queries, which is a great newsletter. You can sign up to get this once, I believe it's monthly, from AppalachianBeer.com. I'm not going to spell that out, but if you Google Hop Queries, that's going to be your first result, and you can sign up for it there. But there was, in the latest issue, he was talking about some measurements they had done on hop thiols. And Brian, again, sorry I got off track there, but since you asked, what are thiols? They are
thiols.
Thiols?
I think they're thiols.
Is it thiols?
I think.
See, now I don't know if I'm saying it right while we go. We'll go with thiols, and I'm going to trust you on this, Brian. I'm going to trust you on this. So hop thiols are sulfur-containing compounds responsible for the primary flavoring in beer. They're present in very small amounts, but they have a big impact on that. So with that said, scientists at Hopsteiner in Germany examined 250 samples of 99 different hop varieties from 12 countries across 5 different crop years to classify hops into low, medium, and high thiol impact hops. They studied levels of 3 polyfunctional thiols. I'm not going to read out the scientific name because I'll mess them up. But we have 4-MMP, which may have a smell of tomato plant, chives, blackcurrant, or cat pea. And when I say cat pea, I bet a lot of people immediately know a hop that's got some of that 4-MMP in there. Citra. A lot of people will say that Citra gives them off a cat pea aroma. So a bit of a spoiler here. Yes, it does have, Citra does have a large amount of the 4-MMP. The other one is 3-MH, and that can be grapefruit, passion fruit, muscat, or gooseberry. And 3-M4-MP, which can be passion fruit, grapefruit, or rhubarb. So the 4-MMP has a much lower threshold of perception than the other two. So high impact thiol hops have both 4-MMP and a sum of 3-MH and 3-M4-MP exceeding 10 parts per billion. 4-MMP is missing in lower thiol impact hops and only a trace of the others are present there. Some popular high-impact hops that I know everyone will know from the flavors they put in their beer are, of course, the Citra, Cascade, Mosaic, Simcoe, and Amarillo. Many of the noble hops fall into the low-impact group, such as Saaz, Fuggles, EKG, and Hallertau. So again, this comes from Stan Hieronymus. There's a lot more info. He noted that the list is extensive, but it's not complete, that there were some hops that they did not study in this. So more info to be done, but kind of interesting to see what's in these hops. And Brian, they weren't even really talking about, or at least not in our circles, about hop thiols, when we were homebrewing. So
no, not at all.
There's new info. I'm sure they knew about them, but they're finding out, what these things do, how they interact with other ingredients, how things interact with, yeast and in the brewing process, when to add them to get the best results. But again, this info is from Stan Hieronymus's Hop Queries newsletter, and sign up for that at AppalachianBeer.com.
So if you use a thiolized yeast with high thiolized hops like a Citra, you would get super duper thiols, or I guess is what you're saying.
Brian, do you know how they thiolize yeast? Like what exactly the process is?
No,
Nate, hop over to Google's Gemini and ask what thiolized yeast is. So we'll see if we can find out here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they do that. Is it a genetic? I think it might be a genetic alteration or like a selective breeding type of situation to make that happen.
And what's the flavor that brings out? Because I know
mango.
Is it mango?
I think it's typically
right?
like big mango, which I didn't see listed in the 4MMP list that you have on here. But I mean, that would be interesting, like a smash with thiolized yeast and Citra. Like I kind of want to see what that's like. Though we have had at least one thiolized beer that I recall, and it was very strongly one note. I don't know what all went into as a homebrew at a homebrew show that we did a few years back. It was good, but it was like very strongly the one note. But very interesting.
It was. Nate, did you find us anything? Tell us about it.
So thiolized yeast is a specifically engineered yeast strain that is designed to produce more thiols during the fermentation process. And thiol precursors, many malts and hops contain precursors to thiols, but these precursors are often inactive. So thiolized yeast are genetically modified to produce enzymes that can break down these precursors, releasing the thiols.
All right.
So they just help unlock more thiols. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, Brian, there's so much more science into home brewing. I'm sure the professional brewers knew this stuff at the time, but it just hadn't really trickled down to what the home brewer was doing. We just mashed some grains and threw some yeast in there.
Exactly right. It's like we looked at the rough profiles of the yeast that were available and like, okay, that sounds like that has the right flocculation and everything else, And honestly, once we found a couple we liked, we just really stuck with those. So I think a lot of people do that. Yeah.
That we would brew occasionally. Now, I think we were probably like a 1-in-1. We would brew something that we knew and loved to keep, and have and drink, and then we try something else. But we always came out. We brewed a lot of saisons and stouts. I think we got into. We never really, Brian, and knowing that how much you love high IPAs, we never really dove a lot into IPAs. We tried a couple, and to be quite honest, we didn't do them much because the couple that we did were not great. They just was not. I don't know if it's our water profile or our brewing style, but we just did not nail IPAs really good.
I think the water profile did add to it, but at the very end, we did do some water chemistry, and I don't remember what the IPA was, but it was solid. Like our Zombie Dust ripoff, which was kind of a pale ale, was not there.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what the name of it was. We did
like an all Simcoe and messed around with a few different ones, and they just never. We had one that tasted like mustard somehow.
Oh,
so, well, that was
with no mustard
tips.
In there. Yeah, that was the spruce tip.
That was the spruce tip beer. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Brian, some news out brewing and unions, big thing, and Stone, Virginia / Sapporo trying to unionize.
Yeah. So the workers at Sapporo Stone's Richmond, Virginia facilities, only that facility, they've begun the process of a union drive. They are seeking higher pay, more consistent scheduling, and better working conditions. The official request for recognition from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Local 322, would cover 90 workers from the brewery, warehouse, maintenance, and hospitality. That's not everybody that works there. I think I saw that there's a total of 160 workers involved at this place, but just 90 of them. According to statements from Sapporo, they say they respect the rights of the workers to decide if they want to be represented by a union, but they also say that they think that the ideal workplace would be best accomplished without a union, which not terribly surprising. It's worth pointing out that Anchor Brewing unionized under Sapporo's ownership, and we know how that turned out. So whether or not the demise of Anchor is directly related to the union is impossible for us to know, but reportedly a vocally pro-union employee has already been fired from Sapporo in Virginia for what they've said. And Sapporo has also reportedly brought in an outside consultant to talk about the, quote, evils of unions, unquote. So we'll be keeping an eye on this. It's likely to get interesting.
I always find unionization effort stories interesting because there's so many facets to this. And I'm cautious to say this on online discussions because you usually get attacked. But since I'm in a podcast and people can't immediately talk back to me, I can filter emails a lot easier. I'm generally not in favor of unions in most cases. Now, I've worked with unions from the other side of things to where I've hired union employees and such, and it's made things difficult. And I've also experienced a lot where I'm not sure they always act exactly in the employee's best interest as they do the union's best interest, So, but that said, I know there are some conditions where it's probably best to unionize, where you need that. And it's interesting because when this goes down, both sides are going to have their points of view. And we saw it, Brian, with Creature Comforts here in Georgia. The Brewers Union of Georgia, Bug, as they were called, would post things to social media. There was a different story, actually I shouldn't say there was a different story necessarily from Creature because Creature stayed pretty silent on it. But there's always, you hear things behind the scenes when you're that close to a brewing scene. And, they talk about someone getting fired that's a very vocal pro-union employee. Big companies like Sapporo and Stone know what they're doing. And, they're going to be very cautious, especially when the union efforts start to probably not misstep. And, sometimes when you get to that point, there are some people, there's other issues there, and I don't know if that's the case here. My point being, before I make too many people angry at me, is I don't think unions are naturally the right answer in every situation. And anytime these go on, there's two sides to the story. And the truth is probably right there in the middle, like with most things.
I think it all gets very political, and it involves a fair amount of propaganda from both sides. And I am inclined to agree that it's impossible for us on the outside to know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because not every union is the same, and they're not all going to accomplish the same thing. And I don't think they're all going to obviously be good for you. However, that said, a lot of businesses are crappy to their employees, and they probably would benefit.
Could use the power of a union,
exactly, to negotiate like better in more reasonable working conditions. So I don't know where to come down on this. I'm a little bitter at Sapporo in general over Anchor, so I'm inclined to side with the union here, and I hope that they are successful. I think it's up ultimately. If it should be up to the people to decide, and they should be able to evaluate it. Ideally, they would get a fair representation of all the information and would vote accordingly. I know that's not going to happen. I know both sides are going to come at them hard and with all of the propaganda they have. And I really hope they pick what's the best situation for them. I do want this to work out well for the workers themselves. I suspect the union will probably be in their benefit, but I don't know. And I'm not automatically, the minute somebody says union, I'm not automatically on board. I'm like, hold on, let's evaluate the situation.
Let's see what's up.
See if this really works out, or if this is just somebody trying to get in between you and your paycheck to collect a few nickels. So that's my thoughts. So I don't immediately side with either side, but we'll see.
Have you ever worked a union job?
I never have. No.
Nate, have you? You ever been in a union? Yeah.
Nope.
So me either. Like I said, my experience my most direct experience is just, hiring people for projects, through unions. Certain cities are still very unionized in my work. And again, as a generality, I'm not pro-union, but like you said, Brian, sometimes the situation dictates that's the best thing for the employees, So it will be interesting to see how this shakes out.
I want to point out historically, they've done great things to keep people from being worked nearly to death and a lot of other stuff. And I think they're responsible for like kids not being put to work at young ages. And so they've done a lot of really good things. I know that's something that should be recognized. This will help keep people from sending as much hate mail to Tim. Send it to Tim. I'm far more reasonable. I could be reasoned with. Tim, no. Just send the hate mail to Tim. And we'll all be good. So there you go.
You know what, Brian? I like to think that I am reasonable, actually, that I don't take a stance on something and just say this is this. So, and without throwing you directly under the bus, I'll say that you and I have talked about unions offline too. So I'll just throw that out there. And, I like to take in the facts and see. And there are definitely some people who the word unions mentioned and they're just on board. They're on board.
Yes.
Unionize. And there's people that are the other side. You hear it. And I would probably lean more towards the no union, but I still take into consideration everything that's going on.
I think you need
I'm a reasonable man, Brian Hewitt.
I think you need to strongly vet and evaluate your situation because I don't think it's a given. And I think that they're going to I think both sides are going to tell you everything you want to hear, and they're both lying to you at least a little bit. So there you go. That's my recommendation.
Crazy. Moving right along here. Brian, breweries being bought, sold, mergered, all kinds of stuff coming up. The latest is, I don't think this was even that long ago that they bought it, but New Belgium is selling Magnolia Brewing.
Yeah. So, breweries are changing hands left and right. We're seeing it in the news constantly these days. It's crazy. One brewery that's changed hands a lot more than others, or a little bit more than others, is San Francisco's Magnolia Brewing. The brewery was purchased by New Belgium in 2017 when they were in bankruptcy. And then it was acquired by Kirin's Lion Little World Beverages in 2019 when they bought New Belgium. And now it's going to be turned over to an ownership group that includes people from 21st Amendment Brewing and some other organizations, though it doesn't sound like there will be any direct connection between 21st Amendment and Magnolia Brewing. The new ownership will take over the brewery September 1st, and the brewery will reopen once the licensing and permitting has been completed. But it's been a roller coaster ride, and I didn't realize how long Magnolia has been around. It was originally founded in 1997, so it's beloved. That's why people keep working to keep it alive and moving it along. I was like, man, that's a lot of shifting of a brewery around. That's seems like it's not getting love any place it lands. So, but that's the reason why. It's just got a long history. It's got a lot of fans. So, man, I hope this works out for them. I hope that they find a spot and they do really well with this spot. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We talked to, I believe, the original owner, Nate Google time again. See when we have Magnolia on the show. But I think it was a weirdly timed where a month or two before the first sale, and I didn't realize it was way back in 2017, but I think we had talked to the original owner just before the sale, and we were talking about the history, the longevity of the brewery and such, and so it was interesting there to see what was going on with that, with them selling not long after. We have a habit of doing that. We've had a few on the show that a brewer leaves or someone sells or something, right after, either just before or just after we talk to them.
People are just people and breweries are constantly moving. And I want to say that I read that they were fighting with or circling the bankruptcy angle, starting in 2015 and then going into 2017. So it's possible if we talk to them prior to them being sold to New Belgium, they were still fighting financially to stay alive. And, we may have been part of their campaign to get the word out. Hey, buy our beer, help keep us afloat.
Buy. Yeah. Nate, did you find the info we're looking for here?
Not yet.
Okay. All right.
It's running a little slow on my end.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, Brian, along the same vein, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. We can backtrack, but Left Hand Brewing, talking about the buy, sell, merge and all that. Left Hand Brewing, the way they're putting it is trying to make a craft platform. And what's the scoop on this one?
Yeah, they've been facing a lot of the same challenges that all craft breweries have been facing these days, but they have the assets and a plan to deal with it. And unlike many other breweries, they own all their real estate, so all of their land is theirs. They're not paying a landlord who's raising the rates on them. And they've got distribution in 45 states, and they have a great deal of unused brewing capacity. So they're in the process of creating what they're calling a brewing platform. That other breweries that are in bad financial situations can exploit to help keep their brands on market. Basically, they'll brew a beer for you and possibly get you into their distribution network. That part's a little unclear. The specifics on how it all will work is still TBD, but it does sound an awful lot like other arrangements we've heard before with the concept of brewing platforms and shared resources. It sounds like there will be differences this time in how the brand ownership arrangements work. So I don't think they're looking to take on ownership of brands they're brewing. Left Hand has successfully completed one round of funding to support the brewing platform effort, bringing in just shy of $500,000. They plan to have a second round of funding with a goal of $1.1 million. And presumably, though, they're going to really get going if they make that happen. Left Hand is capable of producing 100,000 barrels of beer annually, but the company's output is nowhere near that right now, despite the fact that they are doing some contract brewing on top of the brewing they're already doing. So they've got they got a ton of capacity, and they don't have a lot of the expenses others are having. So it kind of possibly makes sense for them to bring others on board and work out like these partnership arrangements. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if that's going to work with the distribution in all places, but all of that's up in the air, and it sounds like it's got potential. We'll see how it goes. We've seen it work interestingly when other people have tried this. I'm just going to say that.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I was like, something similar has been tried before, and I'm not sure this is the best idea. Also interesting, there was a comment on an online discussion that it's interesting that they're doing this call for partners publicly, because normally these kind of mergers or whatever you do is very private discussions, business discussions usually like that. So throwing it out there and just saying, hey, we're looking to do this, come on in, is unusual there. And I don't know, man. I just feel like everybody's trying to figure out something, how can we make this work? What can we do here? And we have definitely seen similar situations, partnerships, whatever the heck you want to call them, fail miserably and make people very angry and involve lawsuits and all of that. Left Hand's been around a while. I think they're a pretty respectable brewery, so I don't think we'd run into that kind of stuff. But it's been interesting.
It's one of those things like, we can brew your beer for you, but can you? When I see that, I'm like technically you can put all the ingredients together, but can you really do what it is they're doing? And I don't know. I don't. That's the hard part.
Did you think there was a little arrogance in some of the commentary from Left Hand in the article that we can brew your beer better than you, more efficiently than you, this and that? I'm like, that's not maybe a way to put some of this. Yeah,
it could be. It could be taken that way. Yeah, maybe
we're better than you. You should let us brew your beer.
I did get a strong feeling of, we've seen other people do this and it didn't work, but we totally can pull this off because
we can do this
stuff.
We can do it.
I think getting the word out now, it might be smart, because they haven't got to a point where they have all the funding, but I think they want people that are ready to knock on the door the minute they are ready to start. So you start now selling the idea. And so when you finally have everything together, you don't have to spend a lot of time looking for people. They're already ready and waiting for you. I think that's the idea. I don't know. Okay. I don't know how that works.
Well, good luck to them. Good luck to them. And Brian, to answer my own question from earlier, Magnolia Brewing was actually on our Drink This Beer podcast. Do you remember Drink This Beer, Brian?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's been a long time.
When we were a young podcast, we were getting people asking us to do more beers. We started as a Georgia beer show that we were on the local radio station here in Atlanta. And that's the way we started, was to cover Georgia beer. And we kept having more people ask us to, cover beer outside of Georgia. We wanted to be a Georgia beer show at the time. So we launched another podcast, a shorter one, to focus on some of these other brewers. And then due to demand, Brian, we just kind of merged Beer Guys Radio into covering, nationwide. And Drink This Beer was short-lived, I think about 30 episodes. And I'm not even sure it's out there anywhere anymore. So
the last time I looked for those, I couldn't find them. But
I don't think they're out there anymore.
Well, that explains why I couldn't find Magnolia Brewing on Beer Guys Radio podcast.
Yeah. So that's the scoop there. But Brian, I think it's time that we thank the folks who help us make all of this possible. Beer Guys Radio's awesome sponsors. I want to thank our friends at Terrapin Brewery Atlanta. They're at Truist Park. They are the exploration brewery for Terrapin Beer Company, and they're doing the new stuff plus some old favorites always on tap there. Right there at the ballpark, Brian. If you go to a baseball game, a little bit of baseball left. We'll see if the Braves, hang on there. But you can get a beer from Terrapin inside of the stadium, or if you're out running around the actual Truist Park there, the Battery, as they call it, checking things out. They've got a walk-up window, and I think as long as weather is permitting, you can walk up there, go in the bar, and have a good time, get you a beer. It's so close, Brian, to being Oktoberfest season and for the fall beers to come on. So I know that others think it already is, but I think soon, so soon, it'll be time for that. But go on out, check out what they've got. They're going to have a variety of beers for you. Great people there. Grab a bite from Fox Brothers Barbecue. Tell them the Beer Guys sent you. So thank you so much to Terrapin for sponsoring Beer Guys Radio.
Yes, and it's another week of summer. We've got about 21, 22 of them left by the time this airs, and we're back in the 90s again this week. So what's great on a hot day? A good margarita. You were probably thinking I was going to say a cold beer, and we're going to get to that. But this week, Truck and Tap wants to remind you that they can make you a margarita any way you want it. Skinny, spicy, smoky, or you can get the local favorite, something called Balti's Mom's Margarita. And I don't know what that is. You'll have to go check that out, but it's very striking looking on social media. But if you're thinking of beer, I've got you covered there. Here are my picks for the week. At Truck and Tap Woodstock, I'm going to be getting a pour of Miles from Home IPA, which is a collaboration between Creature Comforts and Good Word, two powerhouses in the Georgia beer world. And they say it's a malt-balanced, earthy, and grassy old world IPA. And I say, yeah, I'll drink that. I'm going to try that. At the Duluth location, my pick is Six Bridges Love Tractor IPA. I think this is technically considered a milkshake IPA, and I don't think I see milkshake IPAs very much anymore, but it's got tons of oats, wheat, lactose, and Georgia peaches, all the haze, all the mouthfeel, and if memory serves, it's pretty tasty too. Just make sure you take your lactate if you need it, because it's gonna be like that. At Truck and Tap Alpharetta, I'm going with Blue Jacket Self-Portrait on the side pull tab. It's a German Pilsner with Bavarian Hallertau and Mittelfrüh hops. It sounds like a slice of heaven to me. And finally, at the Lawrenceville location, my pick is Bold Monk's Resurrector, which you might have guessed from the name is a Doppelbock, because you have to get a Doppelbock if you see one, because you don't see them very often either. So I'm getting a Doppelbock. But for the most up-to-date information about events, food trucks, and beverages of all kinds, margaritas, beers, whatever, check out truckandtap.com. And thank you very much to Truck and Tap for your support.
Now, Brian, is it even Doppelbock season?
I'm going to allow it.
Isn't that the... Okay.
No, it not really, but I'm going to allow it. I'm going to get it. And we're really close to where I'm starting to... Well... The official embargo on Oktoberfest ends soon, and around the time this airs, we'll be really close. So
yeah,
I'm allow it.
You'll be drinking those before you know it, man. Just in time for Labor Day.
Well, I'll drink a Samet Claus in the middle of the year if I feel like it. And that's a Doppelbock. It's 14%. It's great. Is it the right season for it? Arguably no, but I'm going to drink it.
Don't tell you how to live your life, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, this talk has gone back and forth many, many times about breweries and what they tell about what's going in the beer, nutrition information on the labels. And there's always a lot of pushback on these kind of mandates for a small business. But new stuff coming out, potential new mandates. What in the heck is going on?
Yeah, so the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, a.k.a. the TTB, but that's the one you hear people talking about. They're reportedly considering new rules for alcohol labeling. These rules would potentially mandate the display of nutritional information and ingredients on bottles and cans for all alcoholic beverages. The reason this is not required now is because alcohol falls under the umbrella of the TTB, which is not the FDA, and it's not subject to the FDA rules. The rumor is the TTB is likely to move forward with these rules, so this is probably going to happen. Opinions vary on what this is going to really mean. One side, and this is a side that's easy to understand, is that it's a common sense transparency reform that's long overdue for beverages. We need to know what's in them, what the calories are, and all that, yada, yada, yada. The other side points out that the cost of compliance will likely be crippling to smaller breweries and distilleries, and will very likely make it impossible for the breweries and distilleries to release new products on the frequency they currently do, partly because in order to get a new product out, you have to get approval ahead of time. Whereas with food, they are retroactively applying the law. So you release your product and then they look at it and they will pull it off the market if they don't like it. You got to get approval ahead of time with your alcohol or it doesn't go. So you have to wait for them to approve not only your label, but your nutritional facts. So you don't have a chance of selling any of it. It can all just be pulled out. The rug can be pulled out from underneath you. As for my opinion, I don't really care about the nutritional information. I'm not drinking beer for the vitamins and the minerals and the calories. I know they're big. It would be kind of neat to know what they are. Just tell me if the beer has lactose in it and when it was packaged. I need a born on date. That I'd be completely behind them.
None of these Best By dates. Tell me when that beer was born.
I want to know when it went into that package. That's what I want to know. I'd rather have the beer than have the trivia, because the trivia may cost me the beer. And another thing that's a consideration for people that are into cocktails is if this passes, I think we have a good chance that chartreuse will permanently leave the U.S. because those guys are never going to release the list of the ingredients in their bottles. So we'll just lose it, because it's secret. 2 monks in the entire world know what's in chartreuse, and they're never going to put that on a bottle. As long as, and they're monks, they don't care. They've actually already scaled back production. So if it became you can no longer sell it, they'd say, all right, we'll sell something else. We'll make cheese.
That's fine.
Yeah, so we'll just lose it. Yeah.
These kind of mandates, I mean, when you have a big multinational, Budweiser will put their stuff on their can. They pretty much tell you now. And to be honest, a lot of beers, the ingredients are very simplistic. You've got your water, you've got your grains, you got hops and yeast, and that's it. When you get into fruited beers or our nice barrel-aged stouts and coffee and vanilla and whatever the heck that you got going in there, it's a different story. But for the most part, pretty simple ingredients. It's very natural. Beer's very natural, Brian, in most.
True. I think that a lot of where this is going to really clobber people is when they get into the regular releases of the infinite arrays of smoothie sours and things like that, where the addition of various things is changing all the time. And will it be enough to list? And this is something that I don't think we know yet. Will it be enough to list hops and malt and barley on there? Is that enough? Or do you have to specify what's the grain structure? Is it wheat? Is it barley? Is it rye?
I imagine
you have to break it out like that.
I imagine you'd have to go that close, but you're not going to have to say 2-row pills, golden promise, or what have you. I imagine they would have to say this got corn, barley, rice, what have you in there. Hops, I think they're just going to be able to say hops. It's not something like if something has tomatoes, they don't have to tell you specifically what variety of tomato it is. So
it's a fair point. Well, you have to disclose if there's beechwood used in it for aging purposes.
Beechwood aged. Yes. Would that be an ingredient? Would that have to be included?
Right. I mean, maybe.
Because we'll let the TTB decide. They know better than we do.
It goes into the fluid. Does something come back out of it? We don't know.
Just as long as they unionize them, I don't care what they do, basically. No, and this, all the testing and stuff for these little breweries, it's just, it would cripple. And if it doesn't cripple them, it's going to definitely make our beer prices go up. And as we've already talked, beer prices already outpacing inflation. We don't need another driver to up beer prices.
The big thing that's going to be difficult is the ingredients won't be difficult for beer because you could probably generalize a lot of those. Figuring out what the calories are may be difficult because it's going to change from one batch to another. And the seasonal stuff is going to be really interesting. And how dry did this ferment out? How much alcohol? And I know they can homogenize that a bit, but every beer is going to need different calorie information. I guess you could lie and hope you don't get caught, but
well, I'm curious. Normally, there's a little bit of flex on things like that. Even talking like a can of green beans, you can have a little variance. You know, fish. The fish we get, you know, one tin of sardines. Those sardines may have got a little fatter than the others. You know, so but we're going to be within this ballpark. That's like ABV. I don't remember the exact percentage, but there is some flex on what they. Yeah, there's a little bit of flex there. So, you know, we've seen beers in Georgia at 13.9%, and we're technically a 14% cap here. So, and I don't think, at least not right now, that stuff has to be tested before you go out. But if there is a situation where like this beer tastes really stinking strong and they test it and it was using Georgia again for an example, they put 13.9 on the label. It's tested by an authority and it's 16.2%, then you can have issues. If they were to test it, and I don't know, Nate, do you know this? Let's say they tested it and it was 14.1. You know, it went right over that. Is that too far? Have they gone too far, Nate?
I don't remember the percentage variance. I used to know, and I think 14.1 actually would be safe, and you could just legally call it 14%. No, but my point with this story is, we see that it would screw over the little guys, but honestly, I think it would just push the little guys into draft only, because you know you gotta have all these stats for it, but if you're not putting it in a can, I don't really think you need to have all the stats readily available for it.
And if it didn't go draft only, it's definitely going to severely limit what's in distro.
Oh, so absolutely.
They'll be like, look,
yes,
creature comforts. They may say, look, Tropicalia is slaying it out there. We're going to get this one done because we know we can sell cases of cans of this. You know, maybe the Athenas are automatics, but those occasional releases that we see out there, they're like, no,
they're gone.
There's not enough in this to bury that cost. Bud Light, fractions of a penny per beer is what that's going to end up costing them to do.
The big ones in the article, it argues that a lot of the big ones already have done that because it's like you said, it's fractions of a penny. It's like it's next to nothing for their cost. It's those like little releases of, I have this one barrel, it was amazing, of this stout, I'm going to release it. And like, there's no way that Jason Pellet would have taken that and gotten all of the tests done to check out the calories in it and disclosed all the stuff. I'm like, it's not. It doesn't sound like it's a hard thing to do, but you're putting that outside of your organization to some other business who's not going to charge you like friendly rates, and they're not your buddy that can just take a beaker and eyeball it. No, these are like certified businesses that they got to go over it, and they're going to cost you something for every time you run something through. They're going to have to run it through their lab and do all the stuff. So
the time, the cost, just so many factors there.
Yeah.
So, Interessante. We'll see how all of that shakes out there. Well, Brian, we talked. Let's see. We talked about that. We talked about that. We've talked about that. We've talked about so many things. Brian, did you know? And I know you know, there are some ingredients that are banned from being used in beer.
Yeah, I saw.
We're going to go from the science segment as beginning to a trivia segment here.
It's a trivia / clickbaity, but I kind of enjoyed this. I got this from AmericanCraftBeer.com. I'm going to give them credit for it. They reeled me and they caught me. I think we all know by now that you can't mix THC and other non-approved cannabis extracts into beers in the U.S. You know, things other than terpenes like the aroma compounds, at least not in beer that contains alcohol. But there's some other interesting entries in the list of banned beer ingredients that I found in this list, and some of them I knew about, and it's like, oh, I had no idea. And the number one for me is thujone, and I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's the psychoactive compound you find in wormwood, which is commonly associated with absinthe. It's the one that everybody thought made you see the green fairy. There's been a lot of debunking of that, but it is psychoactive at high levels. And it turns out this may also be present in Malort, of all things, because I believe that is a wormwood liqueur or something like that is how it breaks down. But apparently,
you can Go ahead, Brian. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow there. Let you go. You may answer my question.
Okay, so apparently you can include limited amounts of thujone in spirits, like 10 milligrams or less, but not in beer. And I think in Europe, it's like 35 milligrams you can include in spirits. So if you want the good stuff in terms of absinthe, you have to get it from Europe still, though the good stuff is probably not any gooder than the stuff you get here, really. If you do have any of this in beer, you cannot exceed 10 parts per million. So it's a very low threshold. It is considered a neurotoxin at high levels, which is the reason why. So you don't want to drink a lot of it. As you were saying, Tim, did I answer your question?
Yeah, because I was going to ask, you said also present in Malort, and I was like, well, can you use it there? Do they have any thujone at all? Because there was a time when wormwood was 100% banned, correct?
Yes. Yeah. It was completely illegal. Yeah, you could not get it at all. And they realized a small amount of it was blown out of proportion, I think. So a small amount of it isn't particularly harmful. And all they were doing, it just allowed them not to go through the process of just removing it, because they were still using wormwood. I believe they were just having to go through a process of cleaning the wormwood of the thujone. And it really didn't do much. So if you have it now, it's not significantly different than if you had it back when it was banned. It's not really different.
I have never done any psychoactive drugs. I never messed with LSD or shrooms or any of that stuff. I'm interested in what that experience is, but I'm more scared of it being bad than I am interested in what it would be. So when they talk about thujone and the green fairy and all that, I'd love to see what happens when you get to the green fairy, but I'm much more of a chicken about it not going well. So that's my big thing there.
I think you get alcohol poisoning before you get to that.
Before you'd see the fairy.
In days of yore, there may have been higher concentrations.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I want. I want that 1800s absinthe.
I think it's possible that there's enough in some of the old stuff. There's also coumarin, which is a natural compound found in tonka beans and some cinnamon spices. It's similar in flavor to vanilla. It's banned because it can cause liver damage and other toxicity in the body, but it's still used in some European beers. I'm not sure which ones, and I imagine they're probably not available in the U.S. There's also calamus, or something called sweet flag. It's a plant whose root has been used in traditional medicine and is a flavoring agent in alcoholic beverages. It is banned in the U.S. due to carcinogenic properties that they observed in animal studies. So this one will straight up give you cancer, and I didn't see any information about what it tastes like anyway, so we can skip that one.
On the calamus, it is sweet, spicy, and slightly bitter. It's sometimes compared to a combination of ginger, cinnamon, and nutmeg.
I like that, actually. That sounds really cool.
There you go. Put that in the stout for me right now, right?
Yeah. I'm interested in that. Here's an interesting...
coumarin and calamus?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, there you go. Another one that's interesting is a kind of a partial ban or like a questionable legality. Bitter orange peel with high synephrine, I think is how you say it. So if bitter orange, synephrine, could be that. Bitter orange peel is often used in brewing for flavor, particularly Belgian ales like your wits. But if it contains high levels of synephrine or synephrine, it's banned or it's questionable legalities. The reason is synephrine is a compound similar to ephedrine.
I know that's
which is key in meth.
Yeah.
Ephedrine
and Sudafed.
Yes.
FYI.
So as a result, that can actually like be a stimulant when you drink, and I think they don't like that. My thought is they just don't want people selling or making anything with bitter orange peel with the high levels of this compound, because they'll just turn that into meth. Like if you had a beer,
those bitter oranges.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if there's enough of it in there to actually give you a stimulating effect, somebody's just going to buy the beer and just turn it into meth probably. So I think that's a real reason for it. It would be weird to have a beer that amped you up like that. I think that they don't like crossing the streams and sort of stimulants and depressants in terms of what you consume. I found with TTB. So
they don't like you to be cross-faded, Brian.
Correct.
Right. Yep. Well, y'all, that wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. If you like what we do here, please tell a friend to tune in. Share the show. We put it out there on Twitter and such when we launch the actual podcast. Easy enough to share across to your friends and tell them to tune in. So if you really dig what we're doing, check us out at patreon.com/beer guys. We'll send you some cool swag. We'll get you on a Discord server and we'll all have a good time. But as always, we thank you for tuning in. Have a great week. And don't forget to drink local. Cheers.